Dr. Olga, welcome back. Thanks for being here again.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Well, and for context, before we jump in, this conversation is especially relevant to me personally because the listeners may not know I got to work with you personally several times on the exact thing we're going to be talking about in today's episode, which is voice. And I'm happy to share any parts of my story that are relevant to this discussion. But this was something I felt like I always struggled with, not just metaphorically, like finding and using my voice, but it also always felt strained to use my voice. And I always kind of attributed this to growing up with parents who were hard of hearing, or maybe being more shy or timid as a child. And then as we found out in our work together, there were possibly many other unconscious programming reasons that I was experiencing that. And with your approach, as people might remember from our other episodes, the beauty of your approach is you don't have to sit in the trauma, you don't have to talk about the trauma, you don't have to dive into the deep feelings of the trauma, you just release the unconscious program. So we're going to get into all of that today. But to start off, can you give us some background on voice in particular, and why is it so important to have a pleasant sounding voice, to be able to use our voice, to be in touch with our voice?
It is so important to have a pleasant sounding voice, not only for public speakers and professional singers. Actually, people perceive you and make a first impression about you, not only how you look, and also by how you sound.
Yeah, exactly. And so, okay, as I found out from working with you, there's much more than just the physicality of our voice. Like, I'm sure certainly there can be things like people could have damage to their vocal cords, or they could have thyroid issues, like physical reasons. But there can be many, many other reasons that someone might experience trouble with their voice. And that's what I found out for me when we did our work together. Can you introduce us again and kind of go back through the idea of unconscious programs and all the things you find in your work that can relate to voice?
Yes. First of all, I would like to talk today about when people have problems with function, whatever is producing their speech and voice, how their voice sounds. As you mentioned, Katie, there are various of health conditions that can create even big problems how your voice sounds. And what I discovered during my work and observing my clients, what cause creating some problems in function of your voice and speech is related to unresolved genetic womb and childhood trauma. And some unconscious programs are forming as a result of that. And they are kind of imprints, and it can happen genetically with your ancestors or you, younger, smaller you. And these imprints can affect your voice. And it is happening even if it happened to your ancestors. Somehow this information, what I believe, will be stored in your genes. And genes can express, it calls epigenetics, because certain things are happening in environment and can create problems with voice. And what I observed in my work, what came as information during my sessions, certain experiences, even what your ancestors experience, can be related to kind of experiences of when your ancestors or younger, smaller you were not allowed to express yourself emotionally and verbally. And it was related either whatever was going on in a family system, it was not allowed in a family system, or socially, or even because in some countries, whatever was going on with like government, and whatever imprints were forming, they were related to kind of an unconscious experience or sense, not allowed and not safe to express yourself, and including with your voice. And like again, these imprints could happen genetically, and your genes could express, and you can have an experience like your ancestors had, kind of not allowed and difficulty to express yourself, or it could happen during your early childhood.
And that's so fascinating to me because the idea of like genetic trauma, I know I've had Mark Wolin on this podcast before, and he explained they have actually found and backed this up in science that in mice studies, the grandchildren of mice who were exposed to a certain type of trauma had a stress response to the scent that was associated with that trauma, even though they had never experienced pain or trauma from that scent at the same time. And we're just starting to understand in science how this applies to humans. I feel like you've already tangibly discovered how this affects people, but I felt like this is a whole new frontier for people to understand, because I know I did talk therapy for a decade, and no matter how much I talked, talk therapy wasn't going to necessarily ever address genetic things or generational things because I didn't have conscious awareness of those things. There was no way for me to talk about them in therapy because I don't remember them happening. They happened before I was born. And so I feel like this is a whole different realm of understanding trauma and addressing trauma from that like unconscious perspective that you explain, that perhaps people maybe have never thought to address. So I know that this is a new and a little bit hard to understand concept for people. But candidly, I've seen in my own life the change in that. I don't know if listeners may have even heard the change in my voice since working on that. And we discovered some interesting things tied to voice that were potentially generational for me, not something that happened only in my lifetime. So building from that conversation, since we aren't consciously aware of our generational or genetic traumas, and it's hard to address those logically in therapy because we're not aware of them, can you walk us through how dealing with that unconscious side can have such a drastic impact on our life now in this lifetime and physically even? Because I tangibly felt the difference in my voice, and I just feel like it's a whole new concept to understand.
And first of all, Katie, your voice has been changed so much. It's so much more projected, deeper and powerful. And also it has melody now. It's amazing. And how fast it happened, and what I do, the results are permanent. What you mentioned before is about genetic trauma, and this trauma passes genetically as transgenerational epigenetics experience. I mean, sorry, as transgenerational epigenetic inheritance. And what's possible to do, it's what I do during my sessions. I assess the quality of voice, and I can experience in what places there are functional changes by listening to the voice. Also, my clients, they do unconscious drawings. What does it mean? Thinking about the issue, for example, their voice issue, they draw kind of a mechanical drawing without thinking what to draw. And it looks like a more abstract drawing. And in this drawing, there will be a lot of unconscious pattern information, and also I can identify what unconscious programs create certain voice issues. And not only it's possible to identify unconscious patterns and programs related to any kind of problems, including problems with voice, it's possible to actually to transform these unconscious programs. And I created a process, it's multi-step process, how to do it. And when this process is done, the unconscious program I'm working on will be transformed. And as a result of that, either that issue will be resolved or dramatically improved if this issue is multi-causal, that more work needs to be done. Did I answer your question?
You did, and I've gotten to experience this. I would love for us to kind of just go through at a high level the whole process that you go through, not like do it on me, but just explain it, because it's so unique and I've never experienced anything like it. And I'll also say the first time I was nervous because I'm very like type A, and in school I had to get like good grades all the time, and I knew some of that was going to be involved, and I kept thinking I was nervous, like, oh, what if I don't know how to do the drawing? What if I don't know how to say the right things? And it was so neat because it's nothing like that at all. I was amazed at how my unconscious kind of just did that. But can you kind of walk us through an overview of the process? Because I feel like it's such a unique approach that perhaps listeners have not experienced in any other form of therapy or work that they've done.
What I do, it is working with the unconscious mind. Even people are awake. And when I identify what unconscious program we need to work on with my client, it's like, again, there are, what I said before, there are certain memories, and they can include genetic memories. And what I mean by genetic, there is the information about these memories. They're not like real memories, like a hardwire that are passed. What I believe, there is the information in DNA about certain experience, but more about what these memories and stressful life events and trauma created as imprints for your ancestors. And that information can be used by your mind. And in these memories, either your ancestors or younger, smaller you, whatever happened, did not have resources how to deal with the situation. And what I do during the process with my clients, it is your unconscious mind will find actually all memories, including genetic and or womb and or childhood, that created these imprints and this issue. And during this process, your unconscious mind will be working on all memories simultaneously. That's why there is no need to recall memories. And for genetic memories, of course, it's very hard to recall them. And during this process, your unconscious mind will be identifying what kind of strategies and resources were needed there when these imprints were formed, and adding them in all of these memories. And what also I would like to add, what these imprints can create, they can affect your mind and your entire body, and create kind of tension or constriction or spasms in muscles, because unconscious programs, they affect the nervous system responses, like flight, fight, freeze, and that can affect your entire body. And what I noticed, even professional singers and public speakers, they have issues with their voice. Even they trained their voice. And what I noticed, some of them, even in younger age or older age, because of what these unconscious programs create, they can develop even like skull-looking tissues and deep wrinkles in their neck. Even I had among my clients professional singers and speakers, and even how it looked, I asked them, did you have surgery in your neck? And they told no. It's what this kind of spasms in muscles can create that. And interestingly enough, when you work on the unconscious programs that create these issues, this can be resolved. People's neck can become smooth, and those deep wrinkles and whatever deep lines that look like scar tissue can disappear. Isn't it interesting?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I know when we did several sessions together and I felt like physical changes actually in my neck. Like in the initial session, I described it as feeling like constricted or like it took effort to speak. And metaphorically, that even transferred into I had trouble emotionally, like having hard conversations or bringing something up if it was an uncomfortable topic. Or I always felt like I was kind of like, I think I said throttling my voice. And it's been interesting to hear not just the sound changes in my voice, but also how it feels easier to bring something up with someone, even if it might be a tougher conversation, or to advocate for myself when I actually do have a preference about something rather than just saying, oh, whatever you want to the other person. And so it's so interesting how connected that is.
Or it is connected. Of course, because as I mentioned before, these imprints that create these issues, what we are talking about, it is related to kind of a suppression of speak freely and express your emotions. That's why when I work on voice issues, some problems related to emotional expression can be resolved or improved. And even some problems with how your voice sounds can be related to that. Like, for example, some people have monotone, flat voice, and it is related to difficulty to emotionally express yourself. I remember actually in medical school when I studied, I attended some lecture of a fascinating professor, and her lectures were so interesting, only her voice was very monotone. And even though I wanted so much to learn from her, I was falling asleep often because her voice was so monotone.
That's so
And
interesting.
yes, and I remember I had many clients with monotone voice, and it can be resolved very fast. It is working on the unconscious programs and imprints that created these issues because of difficulty or no permission or not allowed to express yourself. And like again, it can happen genetically with your ancestors and also during early childhood.
That makes sense. And we're going to get to do a whole nother one around sleep, which I know is an important issue for moms. But can you also briefly touch on, I know there are so many things that unconscious programs can relate to in our life, but maybe touch on some of the ones people may not think about, or maybe you don't even think are possible to work on, or some things you've seen with your clients? Kind of, I know you've told me some amazing stories of things that resolved that people would maybe not at first glance have even thought could be related to unconscious programs.
Ah, Katie, I just remembered something important. Can I add one more thing for voice topic?
Of course.
Um, I remember I had a client and her voice, there are different type of problems how your voice sounds. Among them, it's kind of not projected and quiet voice that is not loud enough. And also the other issues like very high pitch voice and also screechy voice. And that client had such a low voice. When I asked her, can you please try for one moment to talk as loud as you can? She tried and she put so much effort on her vocal cords, her face turned red even for such an effort. Only her voice did not change. It was the same low. And she told me no matter what she did try to sound more loud, it never worked. And especially it was a problem for her during conferences when she was in front of groups of people and she even did not try to talk, she told, because it was impossible to overpower some people's voices. Isn't it interesting how these problems can be experienced, even people try to change and to talk differently?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I've seen that too, because I did voice lessons, I've done speaking training. I speak for a living on this podcast, and the training aspect didn't address it in the same way that resolving the underlying things did for me.
And also, I would like to add this what I believe fast and permanent results will be to work on the unconscious programs, what created these problems. It's what I do. I'm not a voice coach. Also, you can go to some voice coaches and get some training. And one of the best voice coaches is Roger Love. And you can find him on YouTube, and he has a lot of tips for exercises for your voice.
Wonderful. That's a great tip. And I know we're getting close to the end of time on this episode, but can you just briefly touch on some other sort of unexpected areas where unconscious programs can show up in our life that we might not connect that?
Unconscious programs can affect most areas of your life, including even how you look, because unconscious programs can affect muscles and can create even asymmetry in face, even difficulty to smile authentically. Also, it can affect your health because unconscious programs will affect the nervous system responses, and that will influence your immune system. And also, unconscious programs can affect your relationships because your any kind of relationships, it's about how you think, how you communicate with people, how you respond, and it even can affect emotional intelligence, and unconscious programs can affect all of that, and also can influence how you are at work and in business, and also how you think, feel, emotionally and physically react and behave. All of that, especially your reactions and behavior, it's very hard to change on the behavior level. In order to change it, you need to work on the unconscious programs on the unconscious level.
That makes sense. And like I said, we're going to get to do another episode that will come out after this one that addresses the link between unconscious programs and sleep. So you guys stay tuned for that one. But Dr. Olga, always such a joy to get to chat with you. I'm deeply grateful for your work and how it's impacted my life and for your time and everything you've shared today. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Katie.
And thank you for listening. And I hope you will join me again on the next episode of the Wellness Mama podcast.